Level 1. The decoded coordinates. The estate sale smells like dust and old paper. You flip through a box of water-damaged textbooks, $2 each, on a folding table in a Tucson garage. Your fingers catch something inside a 1973 anthropology text. A synthetic page slides out from a hollowed section carved through the interior pages. The cut runs from page 140 to page 140. Precise. Surgical. Someone used a razor and took their time, probably across several mites. The page has hand-drawn symbols arranged in columns. Not random. You recognize Mayan long count numerals mixed with what looks like GPS fragment notation. Your heart rate shifts before your brain catches up. You close the textbook. You stand in the garage holding the page against your chest. You are 43 years old. A land surveyor in southern Arizona. Amateur cryptanalysis on weekends when the desert is too hot for fieldwork. You make $61,000 a year before taxes. Your truck needs brake pads you have been postponing for 3 months. Your rent just increased to $1,400 monthly. You pay $2 for the textbook. You drive home with a synthetic page in your glove compartment. Your hands shake on the steering wheel for the entire 20-minute drive. You tape the page to your kitchen wall under a desk lamp. The Mayan numerals are small, drawn in faded blue ink. The GPS fragments are interleaved between the glyph rows. It takes 11 days. You use open-source pattern recognition software and a Mayan numeral reference from the University of Texas Digital Archive. You work after dinner each night until 2 in the morning. The cipher works in layers. Mayan numerals encode decimal digits of latitude and longitude. The digits are shifted by a key derived from the insertion page number. Page 114. The key is 114. A second layer encodes depth and marker descriptions using a substitution grid keyed to the anthropology text's index. The index entries for excavation, cache, and northern correspond to directional markers. When the final coordinate resolves on day 11, you stare at your laptop screen. The point lands in the Sonoran Desert, 17 miles north of the Mexican border. The location sits on Bureau of Land Management property. Open. Unfenced. You have surveyed parcels like this terrain 100 times in your career. You cross-reference the county parcel map. Adjacent to the federal land, a private parcel was purchased 8 months ago by a limited liability company registered in Wyoming. The purchase price was $420,000. Cash sale. No mortgage on record. The registered agent is a corporate service company in Cheyenne with no public-facing operations. You pull satellite imagery of the BLM parcel. The resolution shows 2 sets of vehicle tracks from the last 18 months. Both approach from the adjacent private parcel. Neither reaches the coordinates. You print everything. The decoded coordinates. The satellite image. The county assessor record. You check the cipher 3 times against the original page. Then math holds. Your hands stop shaking on day 6. What replaced the shaking is colder and more useful. A clarity that sits behind your sternum like a steel ball. $100 million in cartel cash, according to the notations hidden in the glyph sequence. Buried at a depth marked by a cairn of 7 stones, 6 feet down. You sit in your kitchen with the lights off. The morning coffee is cold in the cup. Outside, the desert is silent except for a coyote calling somewhere east of the property line. The distance between you and that money is no longer a question of finding it. It is only a question of deciding to go. Level 2. The approach. You spend 3 weeks preparing. Not from caution by nature, but because surveying taught you that desert terrain kills the unprepared. Heat, distance, and isolation do not forgive shortcuts. You drive past the private parcel on a Tuesday afternoon. A white Ford F-250 sits near the entrance. No license plates. No branding. A man in a denim shirt watches from a prefab metal building's porch. You do not stop. You do not slow. You drive 14 miles past, turn around to the gas station, and return. When you pass again, the truck is gone. The man is gone. The building's door is closed. That night, you check the Wyoming Business Registry. The company is called Desert Horizon Holdings. Formed 9 months ago, the registered agent is a corporate service firm in Cheyenne with 300 similar clients on file. No human name, no phone number. A structure designed to hold land without revealing who wants it. You have seen this pattern in surveying deals where the buyer's identity is the whole secret. The cache coordinates sit on federal land you can legally access, but the only maintained road within 12 miles passes directly through the private parcel. Anyone approaching from that direction will be visible. You study topographic maps for 4 consecutive nights. A desert wash, an old flood channel, runs from the northeast through Bureau of Land Management property to within 400 meters of the coordinates. The wash is passable by a high-clearance vehicle in dry conditions. More importantly, a low ridge of caliche and creosote blocks the sightline from the private parcel. The approach is invisible from their position. You assemble your kit methodically. A shovel, a canvas tarp, a handheld GPS unit calibrated to the same coordinate datum as your cipher output, 2 heavy-duty dry bags rated for submersion. You add a Smith & Wesson 9mm pistol you have owned for 9 years. You have never fired it outside a regulated range. You load it and place it in the center console. You tell no one. Not your colleague at the surveying firm. Not your brother in Phoenix, whose calls you have been returning less frequently since the divorce 2 years ago. Not the woman you occasionally have dinner with on Fridays. You take a personal day. You set your alarm for 3:45 in the morning, the night before you do not sleep. You sit on the back porch watching the desert cool under starlight. The air carries creosote and cooling sand. Somewhere in that darkness, in a shaft beneath 7 stacked stones, $100 million weights. You wonder if you are the first to decode the map. Then you wonder if you are the second. Level 3, the cache. You leave at 4 in the morning. The desert temperature reads 43 degrees on your truck's display. Headlights cut through residual dust that has not settled from yesterday's wind. The wash is exactly as the topographic map promised. Rough but passable. Your truck bottoms out twice on embedded volcanic rock. You kill the headlights for the last half mile and navigate by moonlight alone. You park behind the Kilishi Ridge. The GPS reads 412 meters from the target coordinates. You walk. The ground crunches under your boots with each step, the sound impossibly loud in the pre-dawn silence. You find the cairn at 5:51 in the morning. 7 stones stacked. Lichen growth on the bottom 4 stones suggests years of undisturbed presence. The top 3 stones are cleaner, placed last, or replaced periodically. You dig. The ground fights you for the first 18 inches. Then the soil changes texture. Looser. Previously disturbed. Someone excavated here before and filled the hole back in with care. At 4 feet, your shovel strikes something that is not dirt. A hollow, muffled impact. You switch to a hand trowel. Your fingers find plastic to loose soil. Heavy mill contractor bags wrapped in multiple layers. At 5 feet, you expose the top of the cache. 4 military-style transport cases, olive drab, sealed with combination padlocks. The combinations are encoded in the map's marginalia. You decoded them on day 9. The first padlock opens at 7149. Inside the case, bundled cash. $100 bills. Bank straps of 10,000 each, 100 straps per case. You do the math on your knees in the dirt. Each case holds $1 million. 4 cases in the top layer. Then your trowel hits something beneath them. A plywood platform. You lift it. Another layer of cases. Then another. Then another. The shaft extends approximately 10 feet deep and 4 feet square, lined with marine-grade plywood. 25 cases per layer. 4 layers. 100 cases total. $100 billion. The weight registers as a physical problem before a financial one. Each case weighs roughly 22 pounds. 100 cases. 2,200 pounds. Over a ton of paper currency. Your truck cannot carry a ton of additional weight through a desert wash without risking suspension failure. The axle would not survive the embedded rock. You would be stranded 17 miles from the nearest paved road with a ton of cartel cash. You take 4 cases. 88 pounds. $4 million. You wrap them in the campus tarp, load them into the dry bags, and seal the zippers. You refill the shaft layer by layer. You replace the plywood. You replace the soil. You rebuild the cairn with the same 7 stones in the same order. You photograph every step of the process with a disposable camera, not your phone. You drive out through the wash at 7:30 as the sun clears the ridge. Your truck sits lower in the rear. The smell fills the cab, a mixture of old paper, mildew, and something chemical you cannot identify. The smell of money that has been buried in the desert for years. Your hands do not shake on the drive home. They stopped shaking somewhere between the second and third case. What you feel now is not excitement or fear. It is the beginning of a problem you underestimated. Level 4, the first spend. You store the 4 cases in the crawl space beneath your house. The space is dry, accessible only through a hatch in your bedroom closet. You have kept surveying equipment there for years without issue. For 3 days, you do nothing with the money. You go to work. You survey a parcel for a residential subdivision east of Tucson. You eat gas station sandwiches at noon. You do not open the cases. On the 4th night, you carry one strap of $10,000 to the kitchen table. The bills are circulated but serviceable. Series years range from 2006 through 2012. No consecutive serial numbers within any strap. You check 20 random bills against the Treasury Department's public database of currency linked to El Paso seized asset cases. None match. But the database is incomplete. It represents only a fraction of currency flagged through federal investigations. You understand the legal framework that governs what you can and cannot do. Depositing more than $10,000 in cash triggers a currency transaction report. The bank files it automatically with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Depositing under $10,000 to avoid that report is structuring a federal felony. The crime is not any single deposit. The crime is the pattern of deposits designed to evade detection. You cannot deposit this money in any amount that matters. You cannot buy property with cash without triggering a report. You cannot wire it, invest it through a brokerage, or place it in any institution that will ask for a source of funds explanation. What you can do is spend cash in amounts consistent with your existing lifestyle, slowly, carefully, in patterns that match the spending behavior of a man earning $61,000 a year. You pay off your truck loan, $14,200 in cash at the dealership. They file a Form 8300 for the cash transaction. You accept the report. A man paying off a vehicle is not interesting to anyone. You buy brake pads, premium tires, a new water heater from a local plumbing supply. You prepay 6 months of rent. All cash transactions. All routine for a single man in southern Arizona with a steady job. Over 6 weeks, you spend $31,000. Your truck runs clean for the first time in 2 years. Your apartment stays warm through the desert nights. You buy better coffee and fresher food from the grocery store instead of gas station shelves. But $3,969,000 remain in your crawl space, and $96 million more sit in the desert. And every pathway to using any of it at scale requires an explanation you cannot provide. You research through nights that grow longer. Treasury Direct accounts require bank verification. Brokerage cash deposits trigger anti-money laundering protocols under the Bank Secrecy Act. Cryptocurrency exchanges above certain thresholds require Know Your Customer documentation. Every legitimate financial door requires you to explain where the money came from. And every explanation is either a lie that creates its own crime or a truth that ends with federal agents in your kitchen. The money is a fortress with no door. You are inside the walls. You cannot get out. Level 5, the ledgers. You return to the cache 3 weeks later. Same route through the wash. Same pre-dawn approach with headlights off. The cairn sits undisturbed. The ground shows no new vehicle tracks. You extract 8 more cases. 176 pounds. $8 million. The rear axle groans on the wash's embedded rock butt holes. As you load the final case, your hand brushes something at the bottom of the shaft. Not a case. A flat object wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with silver duct tape. You pull it free. It is a ledger. A bound notebook, roughly 200 pages, filled with handwritten entries in Spanish. You read enough Spanish to recognize the structure. Dates. Amounts in dollars and pesos. Bank names. Routing numbers. Account holder names. A systematic record of cash deposits across banks in Sonora, Chihuahua, and Baja California. The name on page 1 is a bank in Hermosillo. Beside it, a notation in Spanish. Personal account, Vice President. The entries traced a laundering network moving bulk cash through Mexican financial institutions into correspondent accounts at 2 United States banks. There are 3 ledgers total, stacked beneath the bottom layer of cases. You take all 3. You leave the remaining 92 cases in place. You refill the shaft, replace the plywood, rebuild the cairn. Driving out through the wash, you pass the Caliche Ridge and glance toward the private parcel. The white Ford F-250 is back. This time, 2 men stand near a freshly dug trench approximately 30 feet inside the property line. They are digging on their own land. But the trench's orientation and depth suggest they are not building anything. They are searching, systematically, working outward from their parcel toward the federal boundary. They know the cache is in this area. They do not have the exact coordinates. They are probing in a grid pattern that will eventually cover the ground between their property line and the cairn. At the current rate, judging by the trench length and spacing, they will reach the cairn's position within 4 to 6 weeks, maybe sooner if they bring heavier equipment. That night, you scan every page of the 3 ledgers at high resolution. You back up the files to an encrypted external drive. You place the drive in a safe deposit box at a credit union under your name. The ledgers change the entire calculation. The cash is money. The ledgers are evidence. And evidence is the only currency that buys protection from the people who own the cash. You call your brother in Phoenix for the first time in 6 weeks. He asks if you are all right. You say you are working through some things. He says you sound different. You change the subject. You do not sleep that night. The insomnia is different from the earlier nights. You are not afraid of what you found in the ground. You are afraid of what you now have to do with it. Level 6, the closing radius. 2 weeks pass. You make a 3rd trip to the cache. The cairn is in place, but 15 feet east of the coordinates, the ground shows fresh disturbance. Test holes, approximately 3 feet deep, spaced at 10-foot intervals in a systematic grid. They are closer. The pattern is professional, military or law enforcement trained, working from the property line outward, covering ground methodically. At this rate, they will reach the cairn within 10 to 14 days. You take 8 cases. You do not linger at the site. As you exit the wash onto the Caliche Ridge, you see a dust plume on the main road, a vehicle moving fast toward the private parcel. White. Shock-shaped. You do not wait to confirm. You drive home through an alternate route that adds 40 minutes but avoids the main road entirely. You check your mirrors every 30 seconds for the full drive. No one follows. That evening, you notice a scratch near the lock on your back door. Fresh metal exposed beneath white paint. The kind of mark a tension wrench leaves when someone attempts to pick a lock but abandons the attempt. You check the crawl space. The cases are undisturbed. The hatch appears untouched. But the scratch is real. Someone tried your back door while you were in the desert. The next morning, a white envelope sits in your mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Hand-delivered between midnight and dawn. Inside, a single photograph printed on standard paper. The photograph shows your truck parked in front of your house, taken from the street. Daytime. Clear angle on the license plate. On the back, 3 words written in blue ballpoint. Spanish. Sabemos que tienes. Got. We know you have it. You hold the photograph by its edges. You place it in a Ziploc bag without touching the written side. You check every window in the house. You load the 9mm and set it on the nightstand. You have $20 million in your crawl space. 80 million more in the desert. 3 ledgers documenting a cartel banking network. And someone with a pic said a white truck and your home address has delivered a message. Your phone rings at noon. It is your brother again. You let it go to voicemail. He leaves a message asking if you want to get dinner next weekend. You delete the message without responding. You are inside a closing radius. Every hour you spend deciding what to do is an hour the men with the photograph spend probing closer to the cairn. Every day you wait is a day they have to try your back door again, and next time they might not abandon the attempt. The money has become a threat. The ledgers have become the only thing standing between you and the people who want the money back. Level 7, the calculation. You spend 72 hours running scenarios at your kitchen table. Every path that involves keeping the cash ends at the same destination. Either the men from the private parcel find you, or the government finds the cash. or the logistics of laundering $80 million through structures you do not control produces a paper trail leading to a racketeering chart. The cash is a liability. The ledgers are an asset. This is the only calculation that matters now. On a Thursday morning, you call a criminal defense attorney in Tucson, not through a friend's recommendation, not through an internet search for the cheapest option. You call a former federal prosecutor who left government service for private practice 6 years ago. His name is Raymond Vargas. His office sits on the 4th floor of a building downtown overlooking the federal courthouse. His retainer is $15,000. You pay in cash from the crawl space. He counts it twice and does not ask where it came from. You explain the situation in measured terms. You found documents relating to criminal activity by a transnational organization. The documents include financial ledgers naming United States banking institutions. You have not committed any crime beyond possessing the documents and some related materials. Vargas corrects you on one point with professional flatness. Removing cash from federal land that you knew or should have known was proceeds of criminal activity constitutes theft of government property. The Bureau of Land Management land gives the federal government constructive custody of anything buried on it. This is the moment the fantasy ends. Not with a dramatic confrontation, with a sentence in a law office. The money was never yours. The question is what you receive for returning it. Vargas makes 3 calls that afternoon. 1 to the United States Attorney's Office in Tucson, 1 to the Drug Enforcement Administration Field Office in Phoenix, 1 to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Tucson Resident Agency. Within 48 hours, a meeting is scheduled. The night before, you sit at your kitchen table with the 9mm on one side and the photograph in its Ziploc bag on the other. You have not returned the cash in 12 days. The men on the adjacent parcel are still probing. Their grid will intersect the cairn within days. If they find the shaft before the government does, the cash disappears and the ledgers lose their corroboration. You are not bringing the government money. You are bringing them a prosecutable case. A case worth more than currency. A case that could dismantle a laundering network operating across 2 countries. What you have is leverage. Not $100 million. Leverage. And leverage, properly delivered to the right people at the right time, is the only thing that purchases safety for a man in your position. Level 8. The proffer. The meeting takes place in a federal building in downtown Tucson. Conference Room C, 3rd floor. No windows. Fluorescent overhead lighting. A conference table seating 12, though only 6 chairs are occupied. Vargas sits to your left. Across the table, an assistant United States attorney named Ellen Park, a Drug Enforcement Administration supervisory special agent named David Torres, and a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent who introduces himself only as Chris. You had signed a proffer agreement. Under its terms, statements you make in this room cannot be used directly against you in a subsequent criminal prosecution. They can be used derivatively. If the government independently develops evidence based on what you disclose, that evidence is admissible. The agreement is narrow. It covers this meeting only. It grants no immunity. It is a conditional bridge, and you are crossing it without certainty of the other side. You begin with the textbook, the synthetic page, the Mayan cipher. You present the original page in a protective sleeve. You present your decoded coordinates on a printed overlay matched to satellite imagery. Torres leans forward when you describe the transport cases. He has seen this type of container before. Military surplus modified with combination padlocks, used by cartels for bulk cash transport along the southwest border corridor. You describe the adjacent parcel, the Wyoming Limited Liability Company, the white Ford F-250, the men probing in a grid pattern, the photograph in your mailbox. You slide the Ziploc bag across the table. Part picks up the photograph with a latex glove. She reads the Spanish on the back. She looks at Torres. Something passes between them that you cannot read. Ferg asks about the ledgers. You place the 3 notebooks on the table. Torres opens the first one. His expression shifts. Not surprise. Confirmation. He has been looking for documentation of this specific network for 3 years. The handwriting belongs to a man named Hector Mendoza, a cartel accountant who disappeared in 2017. The Drug Enforcement Administration assumed he was killed after an internal dispute The ledgers suggest he survived long enough to hide financial records as an insurance policy that he never got to use. Park asks how much cash remains of the site. You tell them approximately $80 million across 92 cases. She asks how much you removed. You tell them $20 million. Vargas places his hand on your forearm, a signal to stop talking. Vargas states that his client is prepared to return all recovered currency and lead investigators to the remaining cash. In exchange, you are requesting a non-prosecution agreement and consideration under the Department of Justice's Asset Recovery Reward Program. The room is silent for 11 seconds. You count them by the fluorescent light's faint electrical hum. Torres looks at Park. Park looks at Chris. Chris studies his notes without expression. Park says the request is possible but not guaranteed. She asks for 48 hours to consult with the Main Justice Department in Washington. You agree. You leave the ledgers with them. You walk out of the building into Tucson heat that reads 103 degrees on the bank sign across the street. You do not feel the heat. You feel the absence of the ledger's weight in your bag. For the first time in months, your hands are empty. Level 9, the recovery operation. The agreement comes together in 9 days. A non-prosecution agreement covering theft of government property and possession of criminal proceeds. In exchange, full cooperation, return of all recovered currency, testimony if required, and the ledgers as government evidence. The reward is negotiated separately. Under Department of Justice guidelines for informant cooperation and asset forfeiture cases, a reward of up to 1% of recovered assets is discretionary. 1% of 100 million is 1 million. Vargas argues for 3% based on the unique value of the ledgers. Park counters at 1.5. They settle at $2 million. Not 100 million. 2. Vargas takes his contingency fee of 20%. The remainder will be taxed as ordinary income. The operation is scheduled for a Saturday. You meet the team at 4 in the morning at a staging area off Interstate 19. 14 agents across 3 vehicles plus a forensic evidence van. Torres runs the briefing from the hood of a black Suburban. Your role is narrow. You drive your truck through the wash, same route as before. You park behind the Caliche Ridge. You wait while the approach team moves on foot from the north, using the ridge and natural terrain for cover. When you reach the cairn with Torres and 2 forensic technicians, you point to the 7 stones. The forensic team photographs the undisturbed cairn from 8 angles before anyone touches it. Then you remove the stones one by one in the order you found them. Torres watches the dig without speaking. The soil change at 18 inches. The plastic sheeting at 4 feet. The first layer of cases at 5 feet. Everything documented, numbered, photographed for chain of custody. The cases come out, all 92 remaining. Each one photographed, sealed in evidence bags tagged with case numbers. The forensic team works for 3 hours in silence, punctuated only by Torres giving serial number callouts to a stenographer. Meanwhile, a second team moves on the adjacent parcel. A federal warrant obtained overnight based on the ledgers and your photographs authorizes entry. The white Ford F-250 is present. 2 men are inside the prefab building. When agents approach with the warrant, 1 man exits through the front door with his hands raised. The second exits through a rear door and runs. He makes it approximately 400 meters across open desert before a Border Patrol agent on an all-terrain vehicle intercepts him. The man who surrendered carries a Mexican driver's license and a hand-drawn map on aged paper. The map shows the same general area as your decoded coordinates, but without precision. It is a memory sketch, made by someone who saw the original burial but did not record the exact position. Torres runs both men's fingerprints through the federal database. One has a deferred prosecution file from a 2015 Drug Enforcement Administration operation in Nogales, a logistics operative for a cartel cell that moved cash through the Sonora, Arizona corridor. He had been searching for this cash for 8 months. You are not present for the arrests or the interrogation. You are in Vargas's office, signing the final cooperation documents. Through his 4th-floor window, you can see the Santa Catalina Mountains under a sky so blue it looks artificial. Your phone buzzes. Your brother calling for the 3rd time this week. This time, you answer. You tell him you are fine. You tell him you have been dealing with something difficult, but it is almost over. He asks if you want to talk about it. You say not yet. He says he is there when you are ready. You hang up. You sign the last page. Vargas shakes your hand. His grip is dry and professional. He tells you the reward payment will take 6 to 8 months to process through Treasury. You walk outside. The desert air hits your face. It smells like creosote and exhaust and something faintly metallic that might be the memory of the cash you once held in your hands. Level 10, the afterward. The reward takes 7 months to process. The Treasury Department's Asset Forfeiture Fund does not move quickly on informant payments, even when the informant cooperated fully and the recovered assets exceeded $100 million. During those 7 months, you keep working. You survey parcels for a new commercial development south of Tucson. You drive the same truck with its new brake pads and premium tires. You eat better food, but you still eat alone most nights. Your brother drives down from Phoenix twice. You have dinner at a steakhouse on Speedway Boulevard. You do not tell him what happened, but you talk more than you have in 2 years. He notices. He does not push. The woman you used to see on Fridays calls once. You let it ring. She does not call again. You think about returning the call for 3 weeks, then delete the number. Some costs are not recoverable. They are just costs. Vargas handles the Treasury paperwork. The payment comes through as a direct deposit to a new account at a credit union you opened specifically for this purpose. $2 million less his contingency fee of $400,000, $1,600,000 before taxes. The Internal Revenue Service receives a Form 1099 reporting the reward as miscellaneous income. You file it through a certified public accountant in Tucson who does not ask questions about the source because the documentation is clean and federal. After federal income tax at the top marginal rate and Arizona state tax, you net approximately $1 million. $1 million, not $100 million, not $2 million. $1 million earned through cooperation, taxed as income, documented and legal. You pay off your student loan balance of $19,300. Your credit card balance of $7,400, both gone in a single afternoon of online payments. You place $500,000 in a brokerage account with a major firm, index funds only, total market and international exposure, no individual stocks, no options trading, no leverage. Boring, slow, diversified exposure designed to compound over decades. You place $250,000 in a high-yield savings account at 4.3% annual percentage yield. It generates roughly $10,750 per year in interest. Passive income that covers your rent without touching principal. You keep $80,000 in checking. You buy a used 2022 Toyota Tacoma with 31,000 miles on the odometer. Silver, indistinguishable from 10,000 other trucks in southern Arizona. You pay $32,000 cash and accept the Form 8300 the dealership files. You do not move. You do not upgrade your apartment. You do not tell anyone what happened. The money sits in accounts, generating returns, changing nothing visible about your life except the absence of financial pressure in your chest each morning. The cartel operative detained on the adjacent parcel is indicted on conspiracy charges. The banking investigation stemming from the ledgers continues under seal in a federal grand jury. The bank vice president named on page 1 of the first ledger is quietly removed from his position in Hermosillo 6 months later. You read about it in a Reuters wire item, 3 paragraphs long, buried on the 7th page of a financial news website. No mention of the ledger's origin. No mention of you. The case is attributed to a joint federal investigation. The man who left the photograph in your mailbox is never identified. The white Ford F-250 is traced to a commercial rental fleet in Phoenix, paid in cash under a false name. The rental company's cameras were non-functional. The trail ends at an empty parking lot. You check your back door every night before bed. The scratch from the tension wrench is still visible in the paint. You never cover it. Some marks you keep because they remind you what almost happened. Some nights you cannot sleep. Not from fear. From the memory of physical weight. The case is in your hands. The density of bundled paper currency. The smell of old hundreds mixed with desert mildew and something chemical that might have been the contractor bags breaking down underground. You held $100 million and returned every case, every strap, every bill. You returned it because keeping it would have killed you. Not quickly or dramatically. Slowly, through isolation, paranoia, and the grinding impossibility of spending money that can never be explained and can never truly belong to you. $1 million net, earned, taxable, documented. Yours in a way that 100 million never could have been. You sit on your back porch on a night in late October. The desert smells of creosote and cooling sand after a brief afternoon rain. The stars are bright enough to cast faint shadows on the concrete patio. Somewhere north of the border beneath the Sonoran desert floor, the shaft is empty, filled with backfill. The cairn removed by the forensic team. No surface trace remains. The land has already begun to forget what was buried there. The 9mm sits in the nightstand drawer, not on the kitchen table anymore. The scratch on the back door is still there. You will probably never repaint it. What you have is not what you found. What you have is what you kept. And what you kept is the part that was always worth keeping. Your phone sits on the porch railing. Your brother texted an hour ago asking about Thanksgiving. You pick it up and type a reply. 2 words. I'll come. The desert is quiet. The coyotes call somewhere east of the property line. You finish your coffee, go inside, lock the door, and sleep.